Hello once again, fellow flight simmers and virtual pilots. So as you all know, I've been playing around with Forkboy scenery now for a couple of weeks, and it gave me the idea to try to do this video comparing stock scenery with Forkboy, Ortho, and Orbx, which I also own. So that's what I'm gonna do on this video, basically switching back and forth between the three. And basically we're gonna start at the IRNMN2 approach here at BIKNG. We're gonna follow it down along the coast, do our down base leg around LA, and then go to final. And before I forget, here is my system specs once again, and the settings that I'm using for this video. With all three different sceneries, I'll use the same settings. So we're gonna start here our little descent from 18,000 feet, and I'm gonna be putting on the top, I'm gonna put a sign for what scenery it is, starting with this one here, which is the stock Xplane 11 scenery. So you'll see that banner up above for each one as I switch between them all. So this one here, we're barely starting, our downhill trek. This is pretty much right by Fillmore and Santa Paula, and this is where we're starting our descent. That first one you saw obviously was the stock one. Now we got Forkboy Ortho here. And as you can see, the mountains and well, even some of the details on the ground are a lot better on Forkboy Ortho. And then you'll have, of course, Orbx coming up here now. And you'll notice that the Orbx scenery is a lot more, it looks like the mesh is a lot more detailed. There's a lot more variations in the altitudes and everything, and everything looks a little bit sharper. But they all look, I mean, stock Xplane, as you can see, it looks pretty plain. It looks pretty bland, and it looks kind of yellowish or light brown. But the Forkboy Ortho is extremely amazing. Like I keep saying in my previous videos, I am very, very surprised by how good it is. And I still keep regretting that I didn't download it and start using it earlier until after I got Orbx Southern California. So now here we're approaching, we're pretty much by Simi Valley and Moore Park. That's the area that we're in now. Sometimes I didn't remember that area down there is probably Oxnard, way off in the distance. That is Point Mugu Air Force Base, way down there. For those of you that kind of know the area, I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of these landmarks and everything. So this right here should be Simi Valley. I forgot to fix the scenery shadows that the clouds make before I started recording this video, which I wish I would have done it earlier. I did it after I recorded these videos, but now that I'm looking at them, it really bothers me how they look. But there is a little fix that if you just Google fix cloud shadows, you'll find it immediately, and it's really easy to fix it. Here's Simi Valley with the Forkboy Ortho once again. I'm sorry I'm gonna sound like a broken record when I keep going over these places, but just gonna kind of reiterate or remind you guys of what area we're looking at with the three different packages here. Some of them are gonna be pretty obvious, when we get into the downtown LA area. So right there is Malibu right here. We're coming up on the coast here, approaching the waypoint base of the IRNMN arrival. Unfortunately, I should have put the clear weather on all the way, on all of them. That way there wouldn't have been so much variation as far as the shadows and everything. But I think you get the idea of how, what really matters is the detail of the scenery and the mountains and the terrain down below. So even if there's a little bit of shadow, you'll still be able to see the actual detail quality here. So here's Malibu with Orbx True Earth. You can see that there's a lot more little buildings and houses and just a lot more detail overall. That mountain right there, those ridges are pretty damn nice the way they look. The ones on the very bottom of the screen there. It looks so good. So we're gonna start turning here on Based, going towards Santa Monica now. We got Pacific Coast Highway running right along the edge of the coastline there. You can kind of see it on this one here. It's just that gray looking line that looks like a road.
1,000 to go.
Oh, and I am running a water modification also, so that it can make the water a lot more realistic. So that is not stock. And the weather and everything is SkyMax Pro. So the only thing I'm really comparing here is the ground, the terrain and the houses and buildings and roads and all that. Hopefully by the time you guys are watching this video, you guys already saw my other video that I recorded where I was comparing the load time between the different sceneries here, and I only did them at LAX. So if you go back and watch that other video, you'll know what I'm talking about and some pretty interesting details that I found there. And all of this I did, testing it with Xplane 1150 beta 6, and all of it using the same settings. There's Marina Del Rey and LAX, and there's the 405 freeway going down into the Mulholland Pass, or the Sepulveda Pass as it's sometimes called. This right here, right off to our right, is I think it's like the Beverly Hills area. LAX once again with a stock, and on all of these LAX is going to be the stock LAX. I didn't change anything on the actual airport itself. Now here's the Sepulveda Pass once again with Forkboy Ortho and the Beverly Hills area there. With Forkboy Ortho there's a lot more different types of buildings also. It's not as plain, it doesn't look as repetitive and as plain as the stock ones do, even though they are still kind of repetitive. For whatever reason, it just seems to look a lot better to me. Now there's the down LAX area, not downtown. The 405 freeway there, going southbound. Now here's the 405 freeway into Sepulveda Pass with Forkboy. You can see the Getty Center there on top of the
1,000 to go.
Top of that little hill there, which with the stock scenery you can barely see. There's a little tiny square building there, and with Forkboy it looks somewhat decent, but not as detailed as it does with this one. And there's the shoreline in Marina Del Rey with Orbx. It looks very stunning. Even that hill right off the runways up there with those dirt roads, it looks so realistic on this one here. And as we're approaching LA, you can actually see that with Orbx here, the buildings are a lot more colorful and a lot more realistic, as they're actually, custom buildings that Orbx themselves put in. With stock Xplane 11, they look very just all white and very bland and generic, and with Forkboy they do look a little bit better than with the stock, but still not as good as this. There's a 101 freeway there going over towards Burbank. And we should be approaching our base leg here pretty soon. Flying right over downtown LA now. And with the stock scenery, you really couldn't really see Dodger Stadium at all. That's Burbank Airport way down there. There's the Hollywood sign and the big antennas that are there.
1,000 to go.
So there's Dodger Stadium here with a stock Xplane. There's really nothing there up there in that brown area there. Really can't see too much of anything except the brown area. I mean, you could kind of tell that there's supposed to be something there, but it's not really visible. I was getting ahead of myself earlier. And that down there is supposed to be the Coliseum. That's full of trees with or Forkboy Ortho here. It's like everything is full of trees, but it's better than
1,000
nothing.
to go.
And now there's the area where Dodger Stadium is coming up now with Forkboy, and you'll be able to tell in just a bit that it actually looks like there's a stadium too, but it's also full of trees. And then you can see the parking areas right there. It looks like an abandoned city that got overtaken by vegetation and trees, which is kind of funny. And there's the Coliseum with Orbx. That's the 5 freeway over there going towards Burbank and San Fernando Valley. And there's Dodger Stadium with Orbx. Now that looks like a stadium and a huge parking lot. So now we're going to start turning our base leg, going southbound along the LA River here. And as we get lower and lower, you can start to appreciate how much more detail there is on the Forkboy Ortho and on the Orbx. But especially on the Orbx, because you got all the custom buildings, a lot more detailed and a lot less repetitive too. So I forgot to mention, but you guys probably saw it on the where I put my settings. In order for this to look the way it does, you have to have the number of world objects on high. If you have them on medium, or I'm sorry, not on high, on maximum. If you have them on medium, you're gonna see very few buildings, and if you have them on high, it's gonna look better, but it's not gonna look as densely populated. There's gonna be a lot of blank areas, especially with stock Xplane. At least with Forkboy, you could still see the images of the buildings that are supposed to be there, but once you get low in altitude, you can tell that they're just pictures, they're not actual buildings. But if you have the number of world objects on maximum, a lot of the buildings are actually 3D buildings. Same with Orbx too. I forgot to mention, you probably already noticed it, that up at the upper left corner I have the frame rate counter up there, so you could see throughout the video that, you know, it actually didn't make too much of a difference for my computer whether I was using stock or Forkboy or Orbx. It seemed to stay pretty close to about the same frame rate with all three of them, which is kind of amazing because I always thought that Orbx was going to tax my system a lot more, but I'm very glad that it doesn't. And usually with a Zeebo, you know, I get a lot lower frame rates than I do with, for example, you know, the Cessna 172 or even the Viper jet. I'm usually getting about at least 10 to 15, if not 20 frames per second less with a Zeebo. Alright, so here we are turning final. We're gonna be landing on runway 24 right, the north side of the airport. So once I get down to about 1,000 feet, I'm just gonna go ahead and let the entire final approach and landing play through, and then I'll, you know, go back to the next one and then the next one after that, so you can see the low altitude final approach on all three of them. I really wish I would affect those shadows for the clouds and even the internal shadows too. And finally, here's the turning final for Orbx. So this is where you can see that a lot of the little houses and everything look a lot more, they're more tightly packed and they're more individual for the Orbx one, even though, like I said before, even those are repeated quite a bit, but they still look a lot tighter and a lot different than the other ones though. It's amazing how the color changes so much when I go from the Orbx to the stock. As the Orbx is a lot more brown and just a little bit different colors, but it looks so much nicer. And the Forkboy Ortho, as you can see here, is kind of in the middle of the two. Of course, all those shadows, the clouds up there don't help. Wish I would have put the weather for, you know, to clear and unlimited visibility before I started this, but as they say, hindsight is 20/20, and I always think about those things after the fact. Honestly, it took so long to record this and splice it together and everything that I don't really feel like going back and recording them again. So sorry about that. Okay, here's the final approach for stock Xplane 11 first. And mind you, none of these are going to be perfect landings because, as like I'm always saying, I'm always so much just worrying about getting the video and trying to change the views and, you know, trying to just get footage for the video that sometimes I don't pay attention to what I'm doing for the approach and everything. And you'll definitely notice that on the Forkboy Ortho one. I think I went well below the glide slope on that one, as you'll see in just a minute. Also coming in a little bit little bit too fast, and that's why I do a little bit of floating on each one of these landings.
100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Alright, now for the Forkboy. You can kind of see right there where they're building the new football stadium, but it's not as noticeable as it is with the Orbx. I wonder if once they finish building that stadium, if they're going to put out an update for it, or if it's going to stay empty forever on our scenery.
Thousand feet, stabilized, Mr. Birch, altitude set.
You can see that there's a lot more buildings right there in between the runways and you know, coming up here on LAX, all the hotels and everything. There's a lot more of them when you have Forkboy Ortho on.
500.
This is where I say I went a little bit below the glide slope
300.
because I went sightseeing, which is not a good thing to do when you're trying to land a 737. But I recovered, and I still think I made a pretty good landing out of it.
100. 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
I still need to get me one of those landing speed calculators or those plugins that tell you your landing rate. I tried to install one once, and for some reason it kept giving me an error, so I gave up on it. It would be nice to know what my terrible landing rates are, but
1,000 feet, stabilized,
I'm not too worried about it. Now this is where I tell you that the Orbx really shines when you're really low. It just looks so realistic and so amazing. Now when you add the Mr. X6 LAX HD, which I do have normally on my normal installation, it is even more intriguing, more amazing when you're doing this final approach here.
500.
Just like the entire airport just comes to life. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted it to be the stock LAX for all three of them.
400.
The only thing that changed was the
300.
stock, you know, terrain, scenery, and all that.
200.
The Forkboy Ortho and the Orbx True Earth with its buildings and everything that come included.
100.
But other than that, I didn't have anything else
50, 40.
other than
30,
the weather,
20,
which was SkyMax Pro,
10.
and the water enhancement textures that I told you about. Well, we made it here on all three landings. We made it in one piece, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully I was able to basically portray what I wanted to show, what the difference is between each one of these three packages here. So once again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.